Sometimes life's most defining moments come when we least expect them. On a rain-soaked evening in autumn, Marcus Thompson faced a choice that would change everything: follow his manager's orders or save a stranger's life. As a maintenance worker at Highland Mall, he couldn't afford to lose his job, not with rent due and his daughter's college tuition looming. But when he saw the overturned car on his drive home, smoke rising from its hood, he knew there was only one right choice. That decision cost him his job, but little did he know that fate had something extraordinary in store. Could saving one life end up saving his own? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The fluorescent lights of Highland Mall hummed overhead as Marcus Thompson made his morning rounds, his worn boots squeaking against the freshly mopped floor. 6:30 a.m., same as every day for the past 8 years. His reflection in the storefront windows showed a man in his mid-40s, tall and lean, with gentle eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. The maintenance uniform, while not exactly fashionable, was always crisp and clean. "Morning, Mr. Thompson," called out Jenny from the coffee kiosk, already preparing his usual black coffee, no sugar. "Early as always. Someone's got to keep this place running," he replied with a warm smile, reaching for his wallet. Jenny waved him off. "On the house today. Amy stopped by yesterday and told me about her acceptance letter. Berkeley. You must be so proud." Marcus's chest swelled with pride, even as his stomach tightened with worry. "That girl's something else. Takes after her mother, all brains and determination." He didn't mention the acceptance letter was still sitting on their kitchen table, unopened. The golden opportunity it represented felt more like a weight around his neck. Berkeley meant $40,000 a year minimum. Even with scholarships, the numbers refused to add up. His phone buzzed, a text from Amy. "Dad, don't forget about dinner tonight. I made your favorite lasagna. We need to talk about college stuff." Marcus typed back a quick, "Wouldn't miss it, sweetie," before tucking the phone away. The morning checklist wouldn't complete itself. The mall was his domain. Every squeaky hinge, flickering light, and temperamental AC unit as familiar as the lines on his palms. He'd memorized the quirks of each store's security gate, knew exactly how many steps it took to cross from the food court to the cinema entrance, 127, and could predict which bathrooms would need attention first after the lunch rush. "Thompson!" The sharp voice of Gerald Mitchell, the mall manager, cut through his thoughts. "The escalator's making that noise again." Gerald was a small man with oversized glasses and an even bigger ego, perpetually clutching a clipboard like it was a shield. "And the fountain's still spraying too far on the left side. I need both fixed before the morning rush." "Already on my way to the escalator," Marcus replied evenly, though he'd checked the fountain last night and found nothing wrong with it. "Should have it sorted within the hour. Make it 30 minutes. We've got corporate visitors coming at 9. Marcus waited until Gerald's back was turned before allowing himself a small sigh. 8 years of reliable service, never missed a day, never called in sick. And still, Gerald treated him like a first-day hire who needed constant supervision. The escalator's mechanical room was Marcus's favorite spot in the mall. Quiet, cool, and filled with the honest simplicity of gears and motors. Here, things either worked or they didn't. No office politics, no passive-aggressive notes, just problems that could be solved with the right tools and know-how. As he worked, his mind wandered to Amy's acceptance letter. His daughter, the future environmental lawyer. She'd been talking about Berkeley since freshman year, her determination never wavering. Just like Claire, her mother, who'd never let anything stand in the way of her dreams, until cancer had other plans. The familiar ache in his chest returned, thinking of Claire. She would have known exactly what to do about Berkeley, would have probably had a college fund set up the day Amy was born, instead of living paycheck to paycheck like he did. The escalator's motor purred back to life under his experienced hands. One problem solved. 1,000 more to go. His phone buzzed again. Another. Text from Amy. Found Mom's old recipe book. Making her special garlic bread too. Love you. Marcus blinked back, sudden moisture in his eyes. Claire's garlic bread had been legendary in their neighborhood, the recipe guarded like a state secret. Amy had been too young to learn it before. Claire passed, but she'd apparently found her way to it now. Thompson! Gerald's voice crackled over the radio. Status on that escalator? Marcus keyed his radio. Up and running, sir. Moving on to the fountain now. Make it quick, and don't forget about the inventory count tonight. Corporate wants a full audit, another requirement, another deadline. But Marcus squared his shoulders and headed toward the fountain. 1 foot. In front of the other, one problem at a time. That's how he'd made it through the past 5 years, without Claire, and that's how he'd figure out this college situation too. He just had to keep moving forward, keep the gears turning, keep the lights on. Something would work out. It had to. Dark clouds gathered outside the mall's skylights as afternoon crept toward evening. The weather matched Marcus's mood perfectly, heavy with anticipation, ready to break. He'd spent his lunch break researching college loans, each interest rate and repayment plan more daunting than the last. The mall's security cameras tracked his movement through the corridors, their red lights blinking like tired eyes. Thunder rumbled overhead, making the vast space feel suddenly small and confined. Attention shoppers! The PA system crackled. Due to severe weather warnings, Highland Mall will be closing at 7 p.m. tonight instead of 9. Please make your final purchases and proceed to the exits in an orderly fashion. Marcus's radio sparked to life. Thompson, we need all hands on deck. Start placing wet floor signs at every entrance. And don't forget about that inventory count. Weather doesn't change corporate requirements. Copy that, Marcus replied, already moving toward the storage closet. From the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of someone, a woman in a charcoal grey suit, looking somewhat lost near the directory. Something about her struck him as different from the usual mall crowd, but before he could place what it was, Gerald's voice cut through again. Thompson! Signs! Now! The first fat drops of rain began hitting the skylights as Marcus distributed the yellow warning signs. His phone buzzed. Amy again. Dad, the storm's getting bad. Drive careful tonight, okay? Lasagna's in the oven. Lightning flashed, followed almost immediately by a crack of thunder that made several shoppers jump. The mall's lights flickered ominously. All maintenance staff to the service corridor. Gerald's voice commanded through the radio. We need to check the backup generators. Thompson, finish those signs first. Marcus quickened his pace, noting how the expensive-looking woman from earlier now stood at the mall's main entrance, frowning at her phone. She wore no ring, but carried herself with the kind of confidence that came from years of success. Their eyes met briefly as he placed the last sign, and she offered a small smile of acknowledgement. The backup generator inspection took longer than expected. By the time Marcus finished, the storm was in full force, rain drumming against the roof like impatient fingers. Most shoppers had already fled to their cars, leaving the mall eerily empty. Thompson! Gerald appeared around the corner, clipboard clutched to his chest. The inventory count needs to be completed before you leave. No exceptions. Sir, the storm is not my problem. Corporate needs these numbers first thing tomorrow. Unless you're not committed to your position here, the threat hung in the air between them, clear as the lightning outside. Marcus thought of Amy waiting at home with dinner, of the college acceptance letter, of the bills piling up on his kitchen counter. I'll get it done, he said quietly. See that you do. Gerald turned on his heel, leaving Marcus alone with the sound of rain and distant thunder. The inventory would take at least 2 hours. Marcus sent Amy a quick text explaining he'd be late, trying to ignore the guilty twist in his gut when she replied with a simple, "Okay, food's in the fridge." As he worked his way through the storage rooms, counting and recounting, the storm intensified. The mall's structure groaned under the assault of wind and rain, and even the emergency lights seemed dimmer than usual. Through one of the few windows in the service corridor, Marcus caught glimpses of cars crawling along the rain-slicked roads, their headlights barely cutting through the downpour. He thought he recognized the expensive-looking woman's silhouette hurrying to a sleek black car, but in this weather it was hard to be sure. 7:45 p.m. Still nearly an hour of counting to go. The radio at his hip remained silent. Gerald had probably left already, warm and dry in his modest but reliable sedan. Marcus rubbed his tired eyes, trying to focus on the inventory sheets. The numbers swam before him, each item a reminder of how much longer he'd be stuck here while Amy sat alone at home. A particularly violent gust of wind rattled the windows, and for a moment Marcus thought he heard something else, a sound like metal grinding against metal, followed by a crash. But that was probably just his imagination. Had to be. After all, who else would be out in weather like this? Marcus heard it again, a distinct crash followed by the screech of tires on wet pavement. This time, he was sure it wasn't his imagination. Setting down his clipboard, he moved to the window, squinting through the rain-streaked glass. Through the curtain of water, he could make out taillights at an odd angle just beyond the mall's access road. No, not just at an angle, upside down. The car must have hydroplaned on the curve, flipping over the guardrail. His radio crackled. "Thompson, status on that inventory." Marcus's hand hovered over the reply button, but another sound cut through the storm. A car horn, steady and unwavering. The kind of sound that meant someone's head was resting against the steering wheel. "Thompson, do you copy?" The image of Amy waiting at home flashed through his mind, followed by the thought of someone else's daughter, waiting for a call that might never come. His fingers moved from the radio to his phone, dialing 911 as he ran through the service exit. The rain hit him like a physical force, soaking through his uniform in seconds. The overturned car came into focus as he approached, a black luxury sedan, now crumpled like a discarded tin can. Smoke rose from the hood despite the downpour, and the horn kept its relentless drone. "Hello? Can you hear me?" Marcus shouted, dropping to his knees beside the driver's window. Through the spiderweb of cracked glass, he recognized the woman from the mall, hanging upside down in her seatbelt, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. The smoke from the engine was getting thicker. Marcus could smell gasoline mixing with the rain. "Ma'am, I'm going to get you out of there." His voice was steady, calmer than he felt. The driver's side door was crushed, but the back door gave way when he pulled. The smell of fuel grew stronger. "Ma'am, what's your emergency?" "Overturned vehicle on Highland Mall access road," Marcus reported, phone pressed between his ear and shoulder as he crawled into the back seat. "Single occupant, unconscious. Smoke coming from the engine compartment. Need fire an ambulance." The dispatcher was saying something about staying back, waiting for emergency services, but Marcus could see the orange glow of flames now visible under the hood. The seatbelt release was jammed, the mechanism crushed in the impact. His pocket knife made quick work of the belt webbing. He caught the woman's weight as she fell, trying to keep her neck stable as he eased her out through the back door. The heat from the engine compartment was becoming intense, even through the rain. They were barely 20 feet away when the fuel line caught. The explosion wasn't movie spectacular, but it was enough to feel the heat on their backs as Marcus shielded the unconscious woman with his body. Red and blue lights appeared through the rain, accompanied by the wail of sirens. As paramedics rushed forward with a backboard, Marcus became aware of his radio squawking frantically. "Thompson, where the hell are you?" "The inventory." "Sir, I had to. There was an accident. I don't want excuses. Get back here immediately, or don't bother coming back at all." Marcus watched as the paramedics stabilized the woman's neck, efficiently checking vital signs and preparing her for transport. One of them glanced his way. "You pulled her out?" Marcus nodded. "Good call." Another minute. The paramedic glanced at the burning wreck meaningfully. "Thompson, last warning." Marcus looked down at his soaked uniform, at the blood on his hands from the woman's head wound, at the burning car that could have become a metal coffin. Then he looked at his radio. "I'm sorry, Mr. Mitchell," he said quietly, "but I'm not." The radio fell silent for a moment. Then, "Clear out your locker tomorrow morning. Your termination notice will be ready." Marcus stood in the rain, watching the ambulance pull away. His phone buzzed, another text from Amy. "Dad, everything okay? Dinner's getting cold." He looked at his bloodied hands, his ruined uniform, thought about the bills and Berkeley and everything else crashing down around him. But when he closed his eyes, all he could see was that woman hanging upside down, smoke getting thicker by the second. "On my way home, sweetie," he typed back. "Had to help someone tonight. I'll explain everything when I get there." The rain continued to fall, but somehow it felt cleaner now, like it was washing away more than just blood and smoke. The fluorescent lights of St. Mary's Hospital cast harsh shadows across Marcus's face as he sat in the waiting room, still in his damp uniform. He hadn't planned to come here, had started driving home to Amy, in fact, but something pulled him to follow the ambulance. Maybe it was the need to know if he'd made the right choice, trading his livelihood for a stranger's life. "Mr. Thompson," a nurse appeared with a clipboard. "The patient is stable. She's still unconscious, but her vital signs are good. The doctor says you can see her briefly if you'd like." Marcus hesitated. "I'm not family." "You pulled her from a burning car," the nurse said softly. "That makes you someone worth knowing." Room 412 was quiet, except for the steady beep of monitors. The woman from the mall looked smaller somehow, vulnerable in the hospital gown. The cut on her forehead had been cleaned and bandaged, and an IV dripped steadily into her arm. She had no emergency contacts in her phone, the nurse mentioned. Just business numbers. Her name's Catherine Chen, CEO of some company downtown. Marcus nodded, studying Catherine's face. In sleep, the confident businesswoman he'd glimpsed earlier was gone, replaced by someone who could have been anyone's sister, daughter, friend. His phone buzzed. Amy again. "Dad, where are you? I'm worried." Guilt twisted in his stomach as he typed back, "At the hospital, everyone's okay. Be home soon to explain." "The police want to talk to you," the nurse added. "Standard procedure for accident responses. They're waiting at the nurses' station." The interview was brief, just confirming what happened, documenting his actions. The officer's expression remained neutral throughout, but his parting words carried weight. "Good thing you were there. Not many people would have stopped in that weather." By the time Marcus left the hospital, midnight was approaching. The storm had passed, leaving behind that peculiar silence that follows heavy rain. His uniform was still damp, uncomfortable against his skin, but he barely noticed. The lights were still on in their small apartment when he arrived home. Amy sat at the kitchen table, their barely touched dinner pushed aside, her acceptance letter serving as a makeshift coaster under a cold cup of tea. "Dad?" Her voice wavered between relief and worry. At 18, she looked so much like Claire, it made his heart ache. "I'm okay, sweetie." He held up his hands before she could hug him, gesturing at his dirty uniform. "Let me clean up first." In the bathroom, Marcus finally saw his reflection, streaks of soot on his face, a small cut on his cheek he hadn't even felt. The maintenance badge on his shirt was cracked, the plastic splintered from the rescue. He unpinned it carefully, setting it aside. 8 years of service, reduced to a broken piece of plastic. When he emerged in clean clothes, Amy had reheated the lasagna. The garlic bread was slightly soggy now, but the smell still filled the apartment with memories of Claire. "Tell me everything," Amy said, pushing a plate toward him, so he did. The inventory count, the storm, the crash, Catherine hanging upside down in her seatbelt, the smell of gasoline, Gerald's ultimatum. "You got fired?" Amy's fork clattered against her plate. "But you saved someone's life." "Some things are more important than keeping a job," Marcus said quietly, thinking of Catherine's unconscious form in the hospital bed. "But what about—" Amy's eyes drifted to the acceptance letter. "We'll figure it out." Marcus reached across the table, squeezing her hand. Your mom always said there were more ways than one to climb a mountain. She also said you were the best man she'd ever known. Amy's voice was thick with emotion. I guess she was right. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the day settling around them like a heavy blanket. Finally, Amy spoke again. The lasagna's terrible, isn't it? Nothing like Mom's. Marcus laughed, the sound surprising them both. It's perfect, sweetie, just perfect. Later, lying in bed, Marcus stared at the ceiling, his mind replaying the day's events. The job search would have to start tomorrow. Maybe the mall's other stores would hire him. He knew the place better than anyone. Or perhaps it was time for a completely fresh start. His phone lit up with a final text for the day, this one from an unknown number. Mr. Thompson, this is Nurse Rivera from St. Mary's. Ms. Chen woke up briefly and asked about you. She wants to meet tomorrow, if possible. Marcus stared at the message for a long moment before setting the phone aside. Tomorrow would bring what it brought. For now, he had done the right thing, and somehow that would have to be enough. Morning light filtered through the worn curtains of Marcus's apartment as he sorted through job listings on Amy's laptop. The classified section showed nothing promising, mostly retail positions offering even less than his maintenance job had. Paid. His finger traced over a listing for a night security position downtown, the salary barely enough to cover rent. A knock at the door startled him. Probably Mrs. Martinez from next door, checking if they needed any groceries, like she often did when times were tough. Instead, he found Catherine Chen standing in his hallway, looking remarkably composed for someone who'd been in intensive care the night before. Her suit was different, navy blue today, but carried the same air of quiet authority. A small bandage above her eyebrow was the only visible sign of the accident. Mr. Thompson. Her voice was warm but professional. May I come in? Marcus glanced self-consciously around his small apartment. The worn furniture, the water stain. In the corner of the ceiling, Amy's college brochures scattered across the coffee table. Please call me Marcus, he managed, stepping aside to let her in. Should you be out of the hospital? Mild concussion and some bruising. She moved with careful precision, but her eyes were sharp and clear. The doctors advised against it, but I've learned that the best time to act is immediately after someone saves your life. She placed a business card on the kitchen table. Catherine Chen, CEO, Chen Innovations. The logo was familiar. He'd seen it on tech news segments and magazine covers. The nurses told me what you did, she continued, declining his awkward offer of coffee. They said another minute in that car. She trailed off, then squared her shoulders. I don't believe in coincidences, Marcus. I believe in patterns, in cause and effect, in recognizing opportunity when it presents itself. I just did what anyone would have done, Marcus said quietly. Catherine's laugh was surprisingly gentle. No, you didn't. You did what someone exceptional would do. You chose a stranger's life over your own security. That's not common. It's extraordinary. She reached into her leather briefcase, withdrawing a folder. I've spent the morning doing some research. 8 years at Highland Mall. Perfect attendance. Record. Countless commendations from store owners about your work ethic and problem-solving abilities. And then there's this. She held up a newspaper clipping from 3 years ago. A small article about how a maintenance worker had prevented a major electrical fire at the mall, saving the building and potentially dozens of lives. Marcus had almost forgotten about that. You have a pattern, Mr. Thompson, of putting others before yourself, of seeing problems before they become disasters, of taking action when others would hesitate. She placed the folder on the table. I need someone like that in my organization. Marcus blinked. I'm not sure I understand. I'm offering you a job, Marcus, Facilities Director for Chen Innovations' main campus. Full benefits, stock options, and a salary that should more than cover Berkeley's tuition. His head spun. But I'm not qualified. You have 8 years of practical experience managing a complex facility. You understand systems, both mechanical and human. You've demonstrated leadership, integrity, and grace under pressure." She smiled. "The rest can be taught." Before Marcus could respond, the door opened and Amy burst in, freezing at the sight of their visitor. "Dad, is everything okay?" Catherine turned, her expression softening. "You must be Amy. Your father was just looking out for your future when he saved mine." Amy's eyes widened as recognition set in. "You're Catherine Chen. We studied your company." "In my AP economics class." "Did you? Then perhaps you'd be interested in our internship program. We particularly value environmental law students." Catherine's eyes twinkled. "Assuming your father accepts my offer, of course." Marcus looked between them, his daughter vibrant with possibility, and this woman who'd crashed into their lives like a bolt of lightning, offering everything they'd been praying for. "Why?" he asked finally. "You don't know me." Catherine touched the bandage on her forehead gently. "Last night in that car, I was just another person in trouble. You didn't know who I was either. You risked everything to help me anyway." She stood, straightening her jacket. "I believe in investing in good people, Marcus. It's how I built my company, and it's never steered me wrong." She moved toward the door, then paused. "The position starts Monday if you want it. My card has my personal number. Call me once you've decided." She smiled at Amy. "I look forward to seeing you, both on campus." After she left, Marcus and Amy stood in stunned silence, staring at the business card on their kitchen table, a small rectangle of possibility in a sea of uncertainty. "Dad?" Amy's voice was barely a whisper. "Is this real?" Marcus picked up the card, feeling its weight in his hands. "I think it is, sweetie, I think it is." The Chen Innovations campus stretched across 3 gleaming buildings of glass and steel, a far cry from Highland Mall's aging architecture. Marcus stood in the lobby, his new suit still stiff, despite Amy's attempts to break it in by having him wear it around the apartment all weekend. His reflection in the polished marble floors showed a man transformed, at least on the outside. "Mr. Thompson." A young woman approached, tablet in hand. "I'm Sarah, Ms. Chen's executive assistant. Welcome to Chen Innovations." The security badge she handed him was sleek and modern, nothing like his old plastic mall ID. The photo showed him smiling uncertainly, taken just this morning. Marcus Thompson, facilities director, gleamed in silver letters beneath. "The management team is excited to meet you," Sarah continued, leading him toward the elevators. "Ms. Chen rarely makes executive hires without board approval, so you've caused quite a stir." The elevator rode smoothly to the 14th floor, its walls made of glass that offered a dizzying view of the city. Marcus thought of the mall's service elevator, with its familiar rattle and the initials of decades of employees scratched into its walls. "Your office is here." Sarah gestured to a corner space with floor-to-ceiling windows. "Ms. Chen thought you'd appreciate being able to monitor the campus grounds." Marcus stepped inside, momentarily stunned. The space was larger than his apartments. Living room furnished with sleek modern furniture and state-of-the-art monitors, showing various building systems in real time. "The previous facilities director left rather abruptly," Sarah explained, handing him a tablet. "These are the current maintenance schedules and contractor relationships. Ms. Chen mentioned you might want to review them personally." Before Marcus could respond, a familiar voice came from the doorway. "How's everything settling in?" Catherine Chen stood there, looking completely recovered except for a fading mark above her eyebrow. Several other executives flanked her, their expressions ranging from curious to skeptical. "This is quite a change from Highland Mall," Marcus admitted honestly. Catherine smiled. "Good. Change means growth." She turned to her companions. "Marcus saved my life last week. Now he's going to help save this company money by implementing the kind of practical efficiency I witnessed in his previous work." One of the executives, a tall man with silver hair and an expensive watch, stepped forward. "Richard Blackwood, head of operations. I trust you understand the unique circumstances of your hiring." The implied criticism was clear in his tone. Marcus thought of Gerald's clipboard and condescension, of 8 years proving himself every single day. I understand that Ms. Chen values practical experience and proven judgment, he replied steadily. I look forward to demonstrating both. Catherine's smile widened slightly. Richards didn't reach his eyes. After they left, Sarah helped Marcus navigate the building's computerized systems. The technology was light years beyond Highland Mall's manual processes, but the underlying principles were the same. Keeping things running smoothly, anticipating problems before they arose, ensuring everyone could do their jobs effectively. Around noon, his phone buzzed with a text from Amy. How's the first day going? Did they give you a corner office with a view? He sent her a quick photo of the city skyline from his window. Her response was immediate. OMG, Dad, this is really happening. The afternoon brought a series of meetings with his new team, maintenance, supervisors, security coordinators, and building engineers. They were professionals with advanced degrees and certifications, yet Marcus found himself recognizing the same challenges he'd faced at the mall, just on a larger scale. The loading. Dock scheduling is a mess, one supervisor complained. Deliveries backing up, vendors getting angry. Marcus thought of how he'd solved similar issues at the mall by creating a simple but effective system of time slots and priority levels. I might have some ideas about that, he said. By day's end, his tablet was filled with notes and observations. The campus was beautiful but inefficient in places, with systems that had grown complex without necessarily becoming more effective. As he packed up to leave, Catherine appeared again, this time alone. First impressions? She asked, settling into one of his office chairs. Marcus considered carefully. It's different, but the fundamentals are the same. Things break. They need fixing. People have problems. They need solutions. Exactly what I thought you'd say? She smiled. Richard and some of the others think I made an emotional decision after the accident. They're wrong. I made a business decision based on observed performance under pressure. She stood to leave, then paused. By the way, Amy's internship paperwork is being processed. Environmental Law Department is excited to have her. Marcus felt his throat tighten. Ms. Chen, Catherine, I don't know how to thank you. Thank me. By proving me right, she said simply, and left him alone in his new office, watching the sunset paint the city gold. A month into his new role, Marcus found himself working late, reviewing contractor proposals by the light of his desk lamp. The campus was quiet at this hour, most employees long gone. A soft knock at his door made him look up. Catherine stood there, holding 2 paper cups from the same coffee cart where Jenny used to serve him at the mall. I thought you might need this, she said, placing 1 cup on his desk. Black, no sugar, right? Marcus blinked in surprise. How did you know? I make it my business to know my people. She settled into the chair across from him, her usual. Corporate Polish slightly softened by the evening hour. Though I suppose I learned that from my father. He ran a convenience store in Oakland, knew every customer's favorite brand of cigarettes, which kids were allergic to peanuts, who was struggling to make rent that month. The revelation caught Marcus off guard. Nothing in the magazine profiles or company histories had mentioned this. Catherine noticed his expression and smiled. Surprised? Most people assume I came from money. She reached into her bag and withdrew, an old photograph, sliding it across the desk. That's the store, and that's me, age 12, working the register. The photo showed a small, cluttered store with handwritten signs and a young girl perched on a stool behind the counter. Her determined expression immediately recognizable despite the decades between then and now. Dad believed in learning the business from the ground up, Catherine continued. Every morning at 5 a.m., counting inventory. Every evening at midnight, balancing the books. He taught me that success isn't about where you start. It's about how well you understand the foundation you're building on. Marcus studied the photo. Is that why you hired me? Because I remind you of him? I hired you because you remind me of what he taught me. She took a sip of her coffee. When I saw your maintenance records at the mall, how you tracked every repair, predicted equipment failures before they happened, knew every vendor and employee by name, I recognized that same attention to detail, that same understanding that every small thing matters. A comfortable silence fell between them. Outside the window, the city lights twinkled like earthbound stars. Richard's been asking questions, Marcus said finally. About my background, my qualifications. Catherine's expression hardened slightly. Richard's father was on the board when I started this company. He thinks his MBA and family connections make him an expert on everything. But you know what? He's never had to fix something with his own hands, never had to make payroll when the bank account was running dry, never had to choose between paying the electric bill and buying groceries. She stood, walking to the window. My father's store was robbed one night. The thief had a knife. Dad could have given him the money and been safe. Instead, he saw the kid was desperate, hungry, talked him down, fed him, gave him a job. That kid became our night manager, worked there for 20 years. Turning back to Marcus, she smiled. When I saw you choose a stranger's life over your job security, I saw my father in that moment. Some lessons about character can't be taught in business school. Marcus thought about his own father, who'd worked construction until a back injury, forced him into early retirement, who'd taught him that any job worth doing was worth doing right. Amy's loving the internship, he said, changing the subject. She comes home every day excited about some new environmental initiative she's learning about. She's bright, reminds me of myself at that age, all passion and determination. Catherine gathered her things to leave. The board meeting tomorrow. Richard's going to challenge some of your proposed changes to the maintenance systems. Are you ready? Marcus nodded, gesturing to the spreadsheets on his desk. These new contracts will save us 20% annually while improving service quality. The numbers speak for themselves. Good. She paused at the door. You know, my father never got to see all this. Heart attack, 2 years before I started. The company. But every decision I make, I still ask myself what he would think. He'd be proud, Marcus said quietly. Catherine's smile held a touch of sadness. I hope so, just like your daughter is proud of you. She tapped the old photograph still lying on his desk. Keep that for now. Remember where I came from when Richard starts talking about proper credentials tomorrow. After she left, Marcus studied the photograph again. The young Catherine's determined expression reminded him of Amy, of Claire, of every person who'd ever stood at a crossroads between what was easy and what was right. He turned back to his spreadsheets with renewed purpose. Tomorrow would be interesting indeed. The Chen Innovations boardroom felt more like a courtroom as Marcus presented his maintenance system overhaul. 12 pairs of eyes watched him from the polished mahogany table, some curious, others skeptical. Richard Blackwood sat directly opposite him, absently tapping his Mont Blanc pen against a leather portfolio. As you can see, Marcus continued, gesturing to the projected figures, our current contractors are charging premium rates for basic services. By restructuring our vendor relationships and implementing a predictive maintenance schedule, we can significantly reduce costs while improving efficiency. Fascinating, Richard interrupted, his tone suggesting anything but fascination. And where exactly did you learn about predictive maintenance algorithms? Highland Mall, perhaps? A few board members shifted uncomfortably. Catherine, seated at the head of the table, remained still, her expression neutral. Actually, Marcus replied evenly, I learned it through experience. When you've spent 8 years keeping a 30-year-old building running with minimal resources, you learn to spot patterns. The principle is the same, whether it's a mall escalator or a smart building system. He clicked to the next slide, showing a graph of maintenance costs over time. Take our current elevator maintenance contract. We're paying for quarterly inspections, but our usage data shows we need monthly checks on the main lobby elevators and only semi-annual reviews on the executive floor. That's money wasted on both ends. This is all very practical, Richard said, making the word sound like an insult. But we're not running a strip mall here. Chen Innovations is a Fortune 500 company. Our systems require someone who understands them from the ground up, Catherine interjected smoothly. Continue, Marcus. For the next 20 minutes, Marcus laid out his plan in detail. Every number was backed by data, every change supported by concrete examples. From his first month on the job, he couldn't match Richard's polished corporate speaking style, but he knew his subject inside and out. One final point, Marcus said, clicking to his last slide. These changes aren't just about cost savings. They're about building relationships. When vendors feel valued and fairly treated, when maintenance staff feel their expertise is respected, the entire system works better. I've already implemented some of these changes on a small scale and... You've what? Richard's pen clattered. To the table, without board approval. As facilities director, Mr. Thompson has autonomy over day-to-day operations, Catherine reminded him. What are the preliminary results, Marcus? Marcus pulled up a recent maintenance log. Emergency call-outs down 30%. Response times improved by 45 minutes on average. And we're tracking to save nearly $50,000 this quarter alone. The board members began murmuring among themselves, several nodding approvingly. Richard's face had taken on a peculiar shade of red. If I may, he said, his voice tight. While these homegrown solutions might work in the short term, we need to consider the bigger picture, our reputation, our image. Having a former mall maintenance worker managing our flagship campus sends a certain message. The room fell silent. Catherine's expression remained unchanged, but her eyes had taken on a dangerous glint. "And what message would that be, Richard?" she asked quietly. Before he could respond, Marcus spoke up. "With respect, Mr. Blackwood, I think it does send a message. It says that Chen Innovations values results over appearances, that we care more about how things work than how they look on paper, that we believe in promoting people based on their abilities, not their backgrounds." He thought of Catherine's father in his small convenience store, of his own father on construction sites, of Amy's dreams of environmental law. If that message damages our reputation, then maybe we need to reconsider what kind of reputation we want to have. The silence stretched for a long moment. Then one of the board members, an elderly woman with steel-grey hair, began to clap. Others joined in, until only Richard remained still, his face now practically purple. "I think we've heard enough," Catherine said, standing. "All in favor of implementing Mr. Thompson's proposed changes." The vote was 11-1. As the board members filed out, Richard lingered, gathering his papers with sharp, angry movements. "This isn't over," he muttered as he passed Marcus. "Some of us still remember when this company had standards." "We still do," Catherine replied, having overheard. "They're just better ones now." She turned to Marcus after Richard stormed out. "You did well today, but be careful. Richard has friends in high places, and he doesn't take defeat gracefully." Marcus nodded, gathering his presentation materials. "I can handle Richard." "I know you can." Catherine smiled. "That's exactly what worries him." The first sign of trouble came 3 weeks after the board meeting. Marcus arrived at work to find his security clearance revoked. A system glitch that took 4 hours to resolve. Then contracts he'd signed began disappearing from the database. Vendor payments were delayed. Small things, easily explained away, but forming a pattern he recognized all too well. It all came to a head on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, eerily similar to the night of the accident. Marcus was reviewing security footage. Another glitch had wiped several hours of recordings. When Catherine burst into his office, her usual composure shattered. "The environmental initiative," she said without preamble. "All the documentation is gone. Everything Amy's team has been working on for the past 2 months vanished from the servers." Marcus felt his stomach drop. Amy had poured her heart into that project, staying late most nights, talking about nothing else at dinner. Backup servers? Wiped. It says it looks like a targeted deletion. They're trying to recover what they can, but... She ran a hand through her hair, a gesture he'd Never seen from her before. The board presentation is tomorrow. Without that data, the initiative dies, Marcus finished. They both knew who was behind this, but proving it was another matter entirely. Amy's devastated, Catherine continued, sinking into a chair. She came to my office crying. Marcus, I'm so sorry. I should have seen this coming. Richard's using her to get to both of us. The thought of Amy in tears made something shift inside Marcus. He'd spent his life fixing things, broken machines, faulty systems, problems big and small. But this was different. This was personal. There might be another way, he said slowly. The old maintenance office at Highland Mall, I kept backup copies of everything. Paper records, USB drives. Old habit from when the mall's systems would crash. Amy mentioned she'd been emailing herself drafts of her research. You think she might have personal copies? Worth checking, but... He hesitated. The mall's locked. Up at this hour. And after how I left, Catherine was already reaching for her phone. I'll have legal contact the mall ownership. If we can get permission, no time. Marcus stood, decision made. I still have my keys. Gerald always forgot to ask for them back when he fired people. The security code changes monthly, but I know how the system works. I can get us in. Breaking and entering? That's your solution? But Catherine was smiling slightly. You know this could cost you your job if it goes wrong. Already lost one job doing the right thing, Marcus replied. Wouldn't mind losing another the same way. 20 minutes later, they pulled into the mall's empty parking lot in Catherine's car. The building loomed dark and silent, a far cry from its daytime bustle. Marcus led them to a service entrance, his old keys fitting perfectly into the lock. The maintenance office is in the basement, he whispered, though they were alone. Follow me. As they crept through the darkened corridors, Catherine spoke softly. You know, I've been thinking about that night. The accident. What about it? I wasn't just working late. I was hiding out here, avoiding an empty house. My success built all this, but some days I miss that little store in Oakland. Miss having somewhere that felt like home. They reached the basement stairs. Marcus's flashlight beam caught the scuff marks he'd left from years of trudging up and down these steps. After Claire died, he found himself saying, I used to work late too. Easier than going home to an empty apartment. Amy was staying with my sister then, just until I got back on my feet. Took 6 months before I could face being home again. They reached the maintenance office. Inside, everything was exactly as he'd left it. Even his coffee mug still sat on the desk, now dusty with disuse. Found it, he said after a few minutes of searching. 3 USB drives and a stack of papers, tucked away in his old desk drawer. Amy's emails should be on here, along with all her preliminary research. Catherine touched his arm gently. Thank you for risking this, for everything. In the dim light of the flashlight, with the familiar smell of metal and machine oil around them, something shifted between them. The carefully maintained professional distance, the unspoken boundaries, all of it suddenly felt paper-thin. Catherine, he started. A beam of light swept past the office window. Hello? A voice called. Security! Is someone down there? They froze, looking at each other in the darkness. For a moment, they were just 2 people hiding in a basement, united by secrets and necessity, teetering on the edge of something neither of them had expected to find. Then Catherine smiled, a hint of mischief in her expression. Feel like running? Marcus found himself smiling back, like old times. Dawn found Marcus and Catherine in her office, surrounded by printouts of Amy's recovered research. They'd spent the night piecing everything back together, running on coffee and adrenaline. Their escape from the mall had been narrow but successful, though Marcus suspected the security guard had recognized him and deliberately looked the other way. This is good, Catherine said, reviewing the last page. Better than good. Amy's research on sustainable building practices could revolutionize how we approach corporate environmental responsibility. Marcus nodded, trying not to look too proud. She's always been thorough, gets that from her mother. Catherine set the papers down, studying him with an intensity that made him slightly nervous. I've been thinking about something bigger, A complete overhaul of our facilities management division, company-wide. Implementing your systems across all our properties with a focus on environmental sustainability. That's ambitious. It's necessary. She stood, pacing with the same energy she'd shown during their mall escape. What Richard and his allies don't understand is that the old way of doing things, wasteful contracts, ignored inefficiencies, appearance over substance, it's not just costly, it's unsustainable. We need someone who understands both the practical and the progressive side of facilities management. She stopped pacing, turning to face him. I want you to head the new division, Global Director of Facilities and Environmental Operations. Marcus felt the room tilt slightly. That's a major promotion. It's a major responsibility, she corrected. You'll need to travel, oversee implementation across multiple sites, deal with international vendors. Richard will fight it every step of the way. But, she smiled, you've already proven you work well under pressure. Through the office windows, Marcus could see the first employees arriving for the day. Among them was Amy, her laptop bag slung over her shoulder, walking with the confident stride she'd developed since starting her internship. Why me? He asked quietly. There must be dozens of more qualified candidates. Catherine's expression softened. The night of the accident, I was driving home from a charity gala, some CEO award. I had this beautiful speech prepared about corporate responsibility and giving back to the community. Then I hydroplaned, and suddenly none of it mattered. What mattered was that someone who had every reason to keep driving, chose to stop and help. She moved closer, her voice low and intense. That's what this company needs, Marcus. Someone who stops to help. Someone who sees what needs to be done and does it, regardless of protocol or profit margins. Someone who understands that true sustainability isn't just about green energy and recycling programs. It's about building something that lasts. Their eyes met, and that same electricity from the mall basement crackled between them. But there was something else too, a deeper understanding, a recognition of shared values and complementary strengths. The board meeting's in 2 hours, she continued. We have Amy's research back, but I want to present something bigger, show them not just what we saved, but what we're building. If you're willing, it's a lot to process, Marcus admitted. The travel, the responsibility. Amy's just starting college. Berkeley's less than an hour from our West Coast office, Catherine pointed out, and the salary would make tuition a non-issue. But I understand if you need time to think about it. Marcus looked out at the campus grounds, his domain for the past months, now potentially just the beginning of something much larger. He thought of his father, who'd taught him to take pride in building things that lasted. Of Claire, who'd always believed he was capable of more than he imagined. Of Amy, proving every day that passion and practicality could work hand in hand. I don't need time, he said finally. But I have one condition. Catherine raised an eyebrow. Name it. The Highland Mall contract. If we're really doing this sustainability thing, let's start there. That building has life left in it. It just needs someone to see the potential. A slow smile spread across Catherine's face. Already thinking bigger picture. I knew I was right about you. She extended her hand. Deal. As they shook hands, their touch lingered a moment longer than strictly professional. Outside, the sun had fully risen, painting the city in shades of possibility. We should get ready for the board meeting, Catherine said, reluctantly stepping back. Richard won't know what hit him. No, Marcus agreed, thinking of Amy's research, their new proposal, and everything else that had changed since that rainy night. He really won't. The next few weeks passed in a blur of meetings, presentations, and late-night planning sessions. Marcus's new office on the executive floor offered a wider view of the city, but he found himself missing the direct sight of the grounds below. Still, the height gave him a new perspective, quite literally on the scope of what they were building. Singapore office is online, his new assistant announced, poking her head in. They're ready for your consultation about the solar panel. Implementation. Marcus checked his watch. 9 p.m. here, 9 a.m. tomorrow there. These international calls were taking some getting used to. On his desk, a half-eaten container of Chinese food sat next to complex spreadsheets and facility blueprints. Catherine had ordered dinner for them both again, though she'd been pulled into another meeting before eating hers. "Thanks, Linda. Could you—" He gestured at the takeout containers. "Already ordered fresh ones," she smiled. "They'll be here by the time your call ends." The Singapore team was enthusiastic about the sustainable energy proposals, though their questions were highly technical. 6 months ago, Marcus would have struggled with the terminology. Now it felt like a natural extension of his practical knowledge. Solar panel efficiency wasn't so different from managing power consumption at the mall, just on a larger scale. A soft knock interrupted his post-call notes. Catherine stood in the doorway, looking as tired as he felt. "Singapore go well?" "They're on board. Their facility manager actually used to work maintenance in a shopping center too. We spoke the same language." She smiled, entering and settling into what had become her usual chair. "The board's quarterly review is tomorrow. Richard's been unusually quiet." "Too quiet?" Marcus asked, pushing the fresh container of food toward her. Linda must have delivered it while he was absorbed in his notes. Catherine picked up a pair of chopsticks. "He's up to something, but the numbers are on our side. Energy costs down 18% across implemented sites. Employee satisfaction up. Even our insurance premiums are dropping due to better maintenance records." They ate in comfortable silence for a moment, the city lights twinkling beyond the windows. These late-night strategy sessions had become routine, but lately they felt less like meetings and more like something else, something neither of them had put into words. "Amy called earlier," Marcus said finally. "She's loving Berkeley. The environmental law program is everything she hoped for, and she's already talking about summer internship possibilities at our West Coast offices. Like father, like daughter, overachieving already." Catherine's smile was warm. "The Highland Mall renovation plans are ready for review, by the way. The development team incorporated most of your suggestions about repurposing existing systems." Marcus nodded. The mall project had become something of a personal mission, a way to prove that renewal didn't always mean replacement. "I never thought I'd be back there as an owner rather than an employee. Life has a way of coming full circle." Catherine set down her chopsticks, her expression turning serious. "Marcus, about what almost happened that night in the basement." His heart skipped a beat. They hadn't discussed that moment of connection, both too focused on the work ahead, but it lingered between them, making these late nights feel charged with unspoken possibility. "Catherine, Ms. Chen?" Linda's voice crackled over the intercom. "Sorry to interrupt, but there's an urgent call from the Tokyo office." The moment broke. Catherine stood, straightening her jacket. "We should both get some rest anyway. Big day tomorrow." But she paused at the door, looking back. "You know, my father used to say that the hardest part of running a business wasn't making money. It was knowing what matters more than money." "Wise man," Marcus replied softly. "Yes, he was." She hesitated, then added, "He also said that when you find someone who shares your values, you should hold on to them, in business and in life." Their eyes met, and for a moment the late hour and shared mission made it easy to imagine crossing the professional boundaries they'd carefully maintained. But Tokyo was waiting, and tomorrow's challenges loomed. "Good night, Marcus." "Good night, Catherine." After she left, Marcus stood at the window watching the city below. Somewhere out there, the darkened shape of Highland Mall waited for its transformation. Like so many things in his life lately, it represented both an ending and a beginning. His phone buzzed, a text from Amy. "Dad, guess what? Made the dean's list. Give Ms. Chen a hug for making all this possible." Marcus smiled, thinking of Catherine's words about what matters more than money. Some lessons, it seemed, ran in families. The discovery came from an unexpected source. Amy had been digging through old corporate environmental records for her internship project when she found something odd. a pattern of misreported waste disposal data from facilities under Richard's previous oversight. "Look at these numbers," she said, spreading printouts across Marcus's desk one evening. "The disposal costs are way too low for the reported volume. Either they found the world's cheapest waste management company or they weren't disposing of it properly," Marcus finished, a cold feeling settling in his stomach. Catherine, who'd been reviewing site plans nearby, looked up sharply. "How far back do these records go?" Amy shuffled through her papers. 5 years, all from the Southeast Asia facilities when Mr. Blackwood was regional director there. But that's not all. She pulled up a news article on her tablet. There were allegations from local environmental groups, but they were buried. Literally. I had to use the Internet Archive to find them. The article showed pictures of industrial waste seeping into groundwater near a village in Malaysia. The facility responsible had been a Chen Innovations subsidiary, but the company name had been carefully omitted from all official reports. "This is why he's been fighting the environmental initiative so hard," Catherine said quietly. "Our new transparency policies would expose everything." She picked up one of the older records, her fingers tracing the signature at the bottom. "I should have seen it. All those years he was on the board, supposedly protecting our interests, while cutting corners and endangering lives," Marcus added. The memory of Richard's sneering comments about proper credentials took on a darker meaning now. Catherine's face had gone pale. "Those villages, those people." She stood abruptly, pacing the office. "We have to make this right, all of it, but we need proof that can't be buried this time," Amy pointed out. "Mr. Blackwood's pretty thorough about covering his tracks." Marcus thought back to his days at the mall, tracking down persistent leaks and electrical problems. Sometimes the only way to find the source was to follow the trail back to its origin, no matter how deep it went. "What about the waste management companies themselves?" he suggested. "Companies that cheap usually leave a paper trail of complaints, violations." "I can help with that research," Amy offered eagerly. Environmental law isn't just about current regulations. It's about understanding how violations were hidden in the past. Catherine had stopped pacing, her expression shifting from shock to determination. "I'll need to inform the board. This goes beyond normal corporate misconduct. There could be serious health implications for those communities." "Richard won't go down without a fight," Marcus warned. "He's already proved he's willing to play dirty. Then we'll need to be prepared." Catherine's voice was steel. "Amy, can you put together a comprehensive report of your findings? Something that can't be dismissed or explained away?" Amy nodded, already gathering her papers. "I'll work with the Environmental Law Department. We have access to international regulations and historical violation databases." After she left, Catherine sank into a chair, looking suddenly vulnerable. "I trusted him. The board trusted him. All these years, while we were talking about corporate responsibility." Marcus moved to her side, hesitating only briefly before placing a hand on her shoulder. "You can't blame yourself for his actions, can't I? I'm the CEO. Everything that happens under this company's name is something you're willing to fix." "Once you know about it," Marcus interrupted gently. "That's what matters." She looked up at him, their faces close in the dimming evening light. "When did you become so wise?" "Probably around the same time you decided to hire a mall maintenance worker as your global operations director." That earned a small smile. "Best decision I ever made." Her hand came up to cover his where it still rested on her shoulder. "Marcus, after all this is over." A knock at the door made them both start. Linda entered with a concerned expression. "Miss Chen, Mr. Blackwood is asking for an emergency board meeting tomorrow morning. He says he has evidence of serious irregularities in the new facilities management division." Catherine and Marcus exchanged looks. "So it begins," she said softly. "Let him come," Marcus replied. "We've got something he doesn't." "Oh? What's that?" "The truth. And a very determined environmental law intern who knows how to find it." After Linda left, they stayed close, drawing strength from each other's presence. Outside, the city lights seemed to blur with the stars, as if heaven and earth were witnessing their quiet moment of solidarity before the storm. The night before the emergency board meeting, Marcus's office had transformed into a war room. Amy sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by documents and laptop screens showing environmental impact data. Catherine's legal team occupied the conference table, while IT specialists huddled around a separate workstation, recovering deleted records from backed-up servers. "Got another one," Amy called out, holding up a printout. February 2019. Toxic waste disposal costs suddenly dropped by 60% at the Kuala Lumpur facility. No explanation in the records, but I found local news reports about unexplained groundwater contamination 3 months later. Catherine leaned over Amy's shoulder, her professional facade cracking slightly as she read. "Those chemicals, they can cause birth defects, long-term health issues. How did we not see this?" "Because Richard buried it well," Marcus said, studying. The security footage IT had recovered. "Look at this. Every time there was an inspection, the waste storage areas were suddenly immaculate. But check the timestamp on the cleaning crew's entry. 3 a.m., Catherine finished. Emergency cleanup before surprise inspections that weren't supposed to be announced in advance. He must have had inside information," one of the lawyers suggested. "Contacts in the regulatory agencies." "More than contacts," Amy interjected, turning her laptop around. "I found his daughter's LinkedIn profile. She worked for the Malaysian Environmental Protection Agency during the same period." A quiet murmur went through the room. Catherine's hands clenched into fists. All this time, he was lecturing about proper procedures and corporate standards while he was... "Ms. Chen?" Linda appeared in the doorway. "Security called. Mr. Blackwood is in the building heading to his office." "At this hour?" Marcus checked his watch. "Nearly midnight. He must know we're onto something," Catherine said. "Linda, make sure security logs everything he does, every file he accesses, every call he makes." "Already done, and..." Linda smiled slightly. "I may have asked IT to slow down his network access. Any file deletions will take long enough for us to track." Marcus felt a surge of appreciation for how his old maintenance crew mindset had spread throughout the organization. Everyone working together, using their practical knowledge to protect what mattered. "Amy," he turned to his daughter, "you should head home, get some rest before tomorrow." "No way, Dad." She looked up from her research, Claire's determination shining in her eyes. "Those villages in Malaysia, they're full of families just like ours, people who trusted big corporations to do the right thing. I'm seeing this through." Catherine touched Amy's shoulder gently. "Your father would be proud of you. Claire, too. They'd be proud of both of you," Marcus said quietly, meeting Catherine's eyes. The moment was interrupted by one of the IT specialists. "Miss Chen, we've got movement. Mr. Blackwood is accessing the secure servers, attempting to modify environmental compliance reports from 2020. "Let him," Catherine said grimly. "Every attempt leaves a digital fingerprint. By the way," she turned to her legal team, "have our representatives in Malaysia made contact with the affected villages?" "Yes, ma'am. They're gathering health impact data and preparing compensation agreements. The local authorities have been notified about the historical violations." "Good. Richard thinks tomorrow is about attacking our new initiatives. He doesn't realize we're bringing 8 years of his crimes into the light." Marcus studied the room. "They're brilliant young minds like Amy, working alongside experienced lawyers and technical experts, all united in pursuit of truth and justice." It was a far cry from his solitary days, fixing broken equipment at the mall. "Catherine," he said softly, drawing her aside, "whatever happens tomorrow, thank you for seeing something in me worth believing in." She looked at him for a long moment, then did something completely unexpected. In front of everyone, she reached up and straightened his tie, an intimate gesture that spoke volumes. "Thank you," she replied, "for teaching me that the most valuable things can't be measured in profit margins." Their eyes held, and Marcus was acutely aware of Amy pretending not to watch them with a knowing smile. "Miss Chen?" Linda again. "The board members have all confirmed for 9 a.m. and—" she hesitated. "Mr. Blackwood has requested to present his evidence first." "Perfect." Catherine's smile was quietly confident. "Let him make his accusations. Every word will just make the truth more powerful when it comes out." She addressed the room at large. "Get some rest, everyone. Tomorrow we remind the world what Chen Innovations really stands for." As the teams began to pack up, Marcus caught Amy watching him and Catherine with a thoughtful expression. "What?" he asked. "Nothing," she smiled. "Just thinking Mum would really like her." Marcus looked at Catherine, commanding yet compassionate, brilliant yet grounded, and felt something in his heart shift into place. "Yeah," he said softly, "she really would." The morning sun streamed through the boardroom windows as Richard Blackwood approached the podium, his confidence practically radiating from his expensive suit and perfectly knotted tie. The board members sat attentively, some looking concerned, others merely curious. Catherine occupied her usual place at the head of the table, while Marcus sat quietly beside her. "Ladies and gentlemen of the board," Richard began, his voice smooth as aged whiskey, "I come before you today with grave concerns about the direction of our company. Over the past months, we've seen a dramatic shift in our operational procedures, led by," his lip curled slightly, "individuals whose qualifications are questionable at best." He clicked through his first slides, charts showing apparent discrepancies in maintenance costs, scheduling conflicts, vendor complaints, each point calculated to cast doubt on Marcus's leadership. "Furthermore," Richard continued, "these rushed changes to our environmental policies threaten relationships with long-standing partners. The financial implications are considerably less severe than federal prosecution for environmental crimes." Catherine interrupted, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. "But please continue. I'm particularly interested in hearing your explanation for the waste disposal records from Malaysia." Richard's rhythm faltered for just a moment. "I'm not sure what you're referring to." "Then allow us to refresh your memory." Catherine nodded to Marcus, who opened the door. Amy entered, followed by two men in business suits who radiated official authority. "Mr. Blackwood," one of them said, "I'm Agent Chen from the Environmental Protection Agency's International Compliance Division. We'd like to discuss some irregularities in your Southeast Asian operations." The blood drained from Richard's face. "There must be some mistake." "No mistake." Amy stepped forward, her voice steady as she addressed the board. "Over the past 5 years, facilities under Mr. Blackwood's direction systematically violated international environmental regulations, resulting in severe groundwater contamination in multiple communities." She began her own presentation, laying out the evidence with a clarity that made Marcus's chest swell with pride. Health reports, soil samples, tampered inspection records, each piece building an irrefutable case. The company's liability, the second agent added, would be catastrophic, unless, of course, full cooperation and immediate remediation efforts are undertaken. Richard's composure cracked. "You can't prove I knew—" "Actually," Catherine pressed a button, and emails appeared on the screen. "Your daughter's position at the Malaysian Environmental Protection Agency provided quite the advantage, until she decided to protect herself by keeping records of your instructions." "You spoke to Sarah?" Richard's voice was barely a whisper. "She came to us," Marcus said quietly. "Yesterday. Said she couldn't live with it anymore. Those families. You poisoned? They look just like hers." The boardroom erupted in murmurs. Richard gripped the podium, knuckles white. "This is a setup. Thompson and Chen, working together to discredit me." "The only person who discredited you is yourself." Catherine stood. "While you were busy attacking Marcus's background, he was doing what he's always done, finding problems and fixing them, including the ones you created." She addressed the board directly now. We have a choice to make. We can be the company that covered up environmental crimes to save money, or we can be the company that made it right. Marcus's division has already prepared a comprehensive remediation plan for the affected areas. The cost, one board member began, will be considerable, Catherine acknowledged. But the cost of doing nothing would be far greater, not just in legal terms, but in human lives. You're really willing to risk everything? Richard made one last attempt. For what? Some maintenance worker's moral crusade? No. Catherine's voice was steel. For the principles my father taught me when I was working in his store. For the trust these communities placed in our company. And yes, for the man who risked everything to save a stranger's life, and then showed us all how to save our company's soul. She turned to the federal agents. Chen Innovations will cooperate fully with your investigation. And Richard? Her smile was razor-sharp. Consider this your termination notice. The next hour passed in a blur of signatures, statements, and procedures. Richard was escorted from the building, his face ashen. The board voted unanimously to approve the remediation plan. Through it all, Marcus watched Amy speaking confidently with the environmental agents, already planning her summer internship around the cleanup efforts. As the room finally cleared, Catherine touched his arm. Ready to get to work? We have communities to heal. Marcus looked at her, really looked at her, seeing not just the powerful CEO, but the shopkeeper's daughter who'd never forgotten her values. Together? He asked softly, her fingers intertwined with his professional boundaries, finally falling away. Together. 6 months after Richard's departure, Marcus stood in the central courtyard of the newly renovated Highland Mall. The space had been transformed, natural light streaming through solar panels that doubled as skylights, living walls of greenery, purifying the air, and in the center a fountain whose recycled water system he'd designed himself. Hard to believe this is the same place, Amy said, joining him during her break from the Environmental Law Department's satellite office, now housed in what used to be the mall's abandoned West Wing. She'd grown into her role as the project's sustainability coordinator, her summer internship evolving into a part-time position she managed alongside her Berkeley studies. Some things haven't changed, Marcus replied, nodding toward a familiar figure approaching the coffee kiosk. Jenny, still manning her post, but now as the owner of a thriving local coffee chain, waved at them. The usual, Mr. Thompson. Ms. Chen called. She's running a few minutes late for the community meeting. The meeting room, once a shuttered department store, had been converted into a community center. Local residents gathered there regularly to discuss the mall's ongoing transformation into a mixed-use space that prioritized small businesses and environmental sustainability. Remember when Gerald used to hold staff meetings here? Amy asked, as they entered. All those lectures about cutting costs and following protocols? Marcus smiled, thinking of his former boss's reaction when he'd learned who the mall's new owners were. Gerald had practically tripped over himself, offering to stay on as manager, but Catherine had other ideas. He now reported to a community oversight board, which had proven surprisingly good for his character development. Speaking of protocols, Amy continued, pulling up some data on her tablet, the latest readings from Malaysia are encouraging. Groundwater contamination levels are down 40% since we started the remediation program. Before Marcus could respond, Catherine arrived, somehow looking even more graceful than usual despite her rushed entrance. Sorry I'm late. The board meeting ran over. They're excited about expanding the sustainability initiative to our European facilities. She greeted Marcus with a quick kiss, their relationship no longer a secret since that day in the boardroom, and hugged Amy. The three of them had fallen into an easy family dynamic that still sometimes caught Marcus by surprise with its brightness. "How's Sarah doing?" Amy asked as they settled into their seats. Catherine's expression softened. "Better. The testimony against her father was hard, but I think it helped her heal. She's actually asked to join our environmental compliance team, wants to make sure nothing like that ever happens again. The community center began filling with local business owners and residents. Marcus recognized faces from his maintenance days. Store managers who'd trusted him with their problems, cleaning staff who'd shared early morning conversations, security guards who'd looked the other way during his and Catherine's midnight rescue mission. "Ready to present the next phase?" Catherine asked, reviewing their proposal. Marcus nodded. The plans showed how the mall's remaining unused space would be converted into affordable housing units, powered by renewable energy and designed with green spaces that would serve as both community gardens and natural cooling systems. "It's amazing," Amy said, studying the blueprints. "Mom would love what we're doing here." "She'd be incredibly proud of you," Marcus replied, his voice thick with emotion. "Top of your class at Berkeley, leading environmental initiatives. You've exceeded every dream we had for you. She'd be proud of you too, Dad." Amy's eyes twinkled, though I'm not sure she would have predicted you falling in love with the CEO whose life you saved. Catherine squeezed Marcus's hand. "I think she might have. From what you've told me about Claire, she knew a thing or two about recognizing good hearts." The meeting room was full now, the excited buzz of conversation reflecting the community's investment in their shared future. Marcus looked around at what they'd built together. Not just the physical transformation of the mall, but the renewal of an entire community's spirit. "You know," he said quietly to Catherine, "that night in the rain when I saw your car, I never imagined it would lead to all this." "Really?" She smiled. "Because when I woke up in that hospital and heard what you'd done, sacrificing your job to save a stranger, I knew right away you were someone special. I just didn't know how special." "And now?" he asked, threading his fingers through hers. "Now I know that sometimes the best business decisions aren't about business at all. They're about recognizing what truly matters: integrity, compassion, the courage to do what's right. Everything my father taught me, everything your daughter reminds us of every day." Amy cleared her throat dramatically. "If you two are done being adorable, we have a community waiting." Marcus laughed, standing to address the room. Looking at the faces before him, his daughter, the woman he loved, the community he'd served for so long, he felt a deep sense of completion. One choice on a rainy night had changed everything, but it had changed it all for the better. 1 year to the day after the accident, the Highland Mall's central courtyard was transformed for a special evening event. String lights twinkled overhead, their energy provided by the same solar panels that had changed the building's carbon footprint. The fountain burbled peacefully, surrounded by planters full of herbs and flowers grown in the community gardens. Marcus adjusted his tie. Still not quite comfortable in formal wear, even after a year in the corporate world. He stood near the spot where he'd once placed wet floor signs, now watching as guests arrived for the Highland Community Development Project's official launch gala. "Stop fidgeting," Amy teased, appearing beside him in an elegant green dress. "You look fine." She'd flown in from Berkeley for the weekend, having just finished her sophomore year with honors. "Though you might want to fix your boutonniere." It's crooked." As she adjusted the white rose on his lapel, Marcus caught a glimpse of their reflection in the polished floor. For a moment, he saw Claire in every one of Amy's movements. The careful precision, the slight tilt of her head, the way her eyes crinkled when she smiled. "Your mother wore white roses at our wedding," he said softly. "I know. That's why Catherine chose them for tonight." Amy's eyes sparkled with secret knowledge. Speaking of Catherine, Marcus turned to see Catherine approaching through the transformed mall corridor. She wore a simple blue dress that somehow managed to combine corporate authority with graceful elegance. Their eyes met across the space, and Marcus felt the same jolt of connection he'd experienced that rainy night, only now deepened by a year of shared purpose and growing love. "The reporters are ready," Catherine said when she reached them, smoothing Marcus's tie herself despite Amy's earlier efforts. "Are you sure you want to do this? We could just send out a press release." "The community deserves to hear it in person," Marcus replied. Besides, some stories are better told face to face. The gathered crowd represented every facet of their journey. Board members in expensive suits mingling with local shop owners, environmental scientists discussing solar efficiency with former maintenance staff, Amy's college friends chatting with elderly residents about the new community gardens. Jenny had set up a special coffee bar for the event, serving her signature drinks alongside more formal offerings. Even Gerald was there, looking somewhat humbled but genuinely engaged as he explained the community oversight program to interested attendees. Sarah Blackwood stood with the environmental compliance team, her father's mistakes transformed into her mission for redemption. She caught Marcus's eye and nodded respectfully. They'd all found their paths to making things right. Catherine took the podium, commanding attention without having to ask for it. 1 year ago, on a night much like tonight, 2 lives intersected on a rain-soaked road. What followed was more than just a story of rescue and reward. It was a reminder that true success is measured not in profits, but in positive impact. She outlined the Highland Community Development Project. Affordable housing, sustainable businesses, educational programs, and environmental initiatives, all centered around the renewed mall complex. But more than the practical details, she spoke about the spirit of community that had made it possible. We stand here today because one person chose to stop and help another. That choice rippled outward, touching lives far beyond that rainy night. And so, it seems fitting to make another choice tonight. She turned to Marcus, extending her hand. As he joined her at the podium, his heart raced with anticipation of what was coming next. Marcus Thompson came into my life as a maintenance worker, who valued doing right over doing what was easy. He became an executive who proved that practical wisdom often matters more than prestigious degrees. And along the way, she turned to face him fully, taking both his hands in hers. He became the person I want to spend my life with. A hushed silence fell over the crowd. Amy, who'd known this was coming, beamed from her place in the front row. The board knows about this, Marcus whispered, only half joking. Catherine's laugh was warm and real. They do, though I'd have asked anyway. She squeezed his hands. What do you say? Ready to make another life-changing choice? Marcus looked out at the gathered faces. Amy glowing with happiness, Jenny wiping tears from her eyes, Gerald looking quietly ashamed of his past treatment, Sarah finding her own path to redemption, then back to Catherine, who'd seen something in him worth believing in. You know, he said, his voice carrying in the hushed space, some choices aren't really choices at all. Sometimes you just know what's right. When he kissed her, the applause that erupted seemed to fill not just the courtyard, but all the spaces in his heart that had been waiting for this moment. Amy was the first to reach them, enfolding them both in a tear-filled hug. Mum would be so happy, she whispered, and Marcus knew with absolute certainty that she was right. The evening sun painted Berkeley's campus in shades of gold as Amy stepped forward to receive her environmental law degree. From their seats in the audience, Marcus and Catherine watched with pride as she accepted her diploma, her graduation. Robe adorned with honors cords and sustainability advocacy pins. Summa cum laude, Catherine whispered, squeezing Marcus's hand. Their wedding rings caught the light, simple bands that matched the practical elegance of their courthouse ceremony 2 years ago. Think she'll be surprised? Marcus smiled, touching the envelope in his pocket containing Amy's graduation gift. Official documentation making her the head of Chen Innovation's new Environmental Justice Division. For once in her life, maybe. The reception was held in a garden pavilion overlooking the bay. Amy moved through the crowd of well-wishers with confident grace, already every inch the environmental lawyer she'd dreamed of becoming. When she reached their table, she hugged them both tightly. I have something to show you, she said, pulling out her phone. The latest satellite images from Malaysia just came in. Look at the recovery in the affected areas. The reforestation project is actually working. Catherine leaned in to see. her environmental engineer's eye catching details Marcus might have missed. The groundwater remediation techniques you proposed in your thesis are showing remarkable results. Speaking of results, Marcus added, sliding the envelope across the table. A little something from both of us. Amy's eyes widened as she read the documents. But are you serious? The board voted unanimously, Catherine said. They were particularly impressed by your proposal to integrate community oversight into all our international operations. Just like what we did at Highland Mall. Amy said softly, looking at her father, where it all started. Marcus thought of that rain-soaked night that had changed everything. The choice to stop, to help, to believe in something bigger than himself. Every decision since then had led to this moment, watching his daughter prepare to carry their shared vision forward. Your mother once told me, he said, his voice thick with emotion, that the best legacy we can leave is showing others how to carry on our work. She'd be so proud to see you doing exactly that. She'd be proud of all of us, Amy replied, including Catherine in her glance. We've built something real, haven't we? Something that matters? Catherine nodded, her business acumen softened by genuine warmth. The quarterly reports show impressive numbers, but the real success is in the lives we've touched. The communities we've helped heal, the families we've built, Marcus added, looking at these two remarkable women who had become his North Stars. As if on cue, Jenny appeared with a tray of her signature coffee drinks. She'd insisted on catering. The reception personally, her business having expanded to include locations in every Chen Innovations facility. To new horizons, Catherine proposed, raising her cup. To doing what's right, Amy added. Marcus thought of everything that had brought them here. A rainy night, a choice to help, a belief in second chances and the power of practical wisdom. He thought of Claire, watching over them, and Catherine's. A father whose corner store lessons had shaped a corporate empire's heart. To family, he said simply, including it all in those two words. The setting sun sparkled on the bay waters below, promising tomorrow's dawn. In that moment, surrounded by love and purpose, Marcus knew that some endings were really just better beginnings in disguise.